Super Rugby AU Saturday games. We've got both on the Saturday. An early game between the Force and the Rebels, and then the late game between the Reds and the Brumbies. I think this one's on like 3 o'clock local time, which is like 5 o'clock New Zealand. In the middle, you've got the North v South game, and then this one is on, I think, 7 o'clock Australia, so like 9 o'clock over here in Kiwi land. But yeah, two very different looking games. You got the Force looking to get that final win. First win in their final game. This is potentially my last chance to wear the Force jersey. If they get a win in that game, I'll definitely wear it for the review. But the odds are against them. The Rebels need a win to make sure they can qualify in the top three. These two guys have already qualified for that top three, but it will certainly be a big psychological battle to see if the Brumbies go through doing a double over the Reds, or if the Reds can potentially sneak one out. But the first game is the Force against the Rebels. Like I mentioned, they are winless, the Force. It was how they predicted to go down, and it's kind of played out that way. They were pretty good value for some of the games this season, but I know 8 games is not a huge amount, but it's the same as a World Cup, right? So it's a little bit of a mini marathon. They started off strong, didn't maintain that for every game, but the last time these two teams played, it was the Rebels 25, the Force 20. So it was one of the good games. So it's another potential one for the Force to get that one win. The Rebels, though, as I mentioned, they do need a win because they're in 4th. The Waratahs are in 3rd. But I think if the Waratahs, because they didn't get a bonus point last week, they're gone if the Rebels get a win. So it's pretty simple work for the Rebels in this one. In terms of the lineup, Pet Cowan, Andrew Reedy, Kieran Longbottom in that front row, and their scrummaging, at least in the last 2 weeks, seems to have really kicked it up a notch. So I expect them to keep that going. Thrush and Atkins are the second row, so that means Lee Warner continues on at 6. That guy has to get a Wallabies call up. Of all the Force players, I think he is the... I know there's a ton of loose forwards in that Aussie camp, man, but Lee Warner, his ability to cover lock loose forward has to be in the conversation. Stander and Stowers are your other guys accompanying him, and they've both been in pretty decent form actually as well. Australia, as I've mentioned many times before, just seems to breed loose forwards. Pryor and Lance are 9 and 10. Pryor's still captain, and they always look a little bit better when he's on the park. Braki and Ralston are your wingers, with McGregor there at fullback, plus Tafu and Godwin are the midfield. So it means there's no Kahui this week. The old boy is going to sit this final one out. Tessman's there on the bench. He's an addition. Frisbee's on the bench, and so on. For the Rebels, good news for them is Dana Hallett-Petty's back. We haven't seen him for quite some time, and he captains the squad from fullback, which means Hodge and Meeks are in the midfield. So Meeks gets another start after been riding the pine for a few weeks. Korobedi and Pincus are your wingers. Tamua is back at 10, which means Tuttle is at 9. To be honest, I think I'm a fan of Deegan 10 and Tamua 12. But Deegan, I think, had a couple of blunders in that game last week, so maybe that's why Tamua is shifted back into 10. Maybe Dave Rennie wants to see a bit of Tamua at 10. I don't know. Maybe just Dave Vessels thinks Tamua at 10 for this game. The back row as well as Hardwick and Naisarani. Naisarani has been in electric form. So, as I mentioned, tons of loose forwards in Australia. He is another one of them. Hardwick, a bit of an unsung hero as well. Defensively, very sound. Makes a ton of tackles each game, which is not the flashy stuff. It's not the try scoring that Naisarani does. But it's a coach's dream to have a guy who just loves to tackle. The locks are Philip and Hosea. Philip's been really good, but Hosea's been quietly just ticking along as well. I think he was in that Players of National Interest squad, quite rightly. And Orr, Ulysses, and Ainsley are the front row. Orr has been the most impressive of those three for mine. I think he's also quietly been having a pretty solid season. Deegan's on the bench. Stolberg, the lock, is on the bench. Lamani's on the bench, so there's no Campbell Magnay. Unfortunately, there's no Ponefa Amusili. He is a handful when he's playing, but yeah, he's getting a rest. And Callaway is not in the squad either. As I mentioned, last time these two teams met, it was only 5 points in it. So let's hope it's another game along similar lines, even if Rebels fans won't agree. The Rebels are predicted to get this one done by 14 points according to the bookies and 13 points according to Rugby Forecast's online algorithm. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Both of these are the two nomadic teams, essentially. Like, these guys can't play in Western Australia. It's been tough for them living out of hotels. Likewise for the Rebels. So, yeah, you got a feel for both the squads. Either way, one or both of these squads will hopefully be able to go back to their families pretty soon. The Rebels will probably hope they get at least one more week out of it. The second game is the Reds and the Brumbies. Like I mentioned, both these sides are already through. The Brumbies are guaranteed to host. They've finished top, and the Reds are already qualified, but they would still like to certainly put a bit of doubt into the Brumbies' minds if they can get a win before it gets to the finals. And their game last time was pretty close as well. I think it was 22-20 to the Brumbies. So it was a game that they easily could have lost. But I think was that the one that Kunzel kicked the late kick? I think so. Anyway, so yeah, the Reds have named a pretty strong lineup. They have kind of shuffled things around a little bit. Hupit, Paenga-Mosa, and Tupou are your front row. Tupou, as always, just needs to keep his discipline, and he will certainly make a big impact. He'll be licking his lips at the chance of getting hold of the Brumbies scrum, because the Brumbies scrum I don't think has quite been up to scratch this season. Blythe and Salakai Alotso are the locks, which is a pretty good combo. Liam Wright is still 6, McRae is 7, Harry Wilson 8. Talk about depth in Australian back rows. The Reds have got some of the best. Harry Wilson has just been a phenomenon, but Liam Wright with his turnovers, and more recently McRae as well, have all been really good. Tate McDermott's 9 and James O'Connor 10, so kind of a familiar 9-10 combo there. Tate McDermott I still think is the form 9 in Super Rugby AU, and you could potentially say James O'Connor is the form 10. Stewart and Pataya are 12 and 13. Stewart, I know I've talked to some of you guys about this in the comments. Stewart has definitely grown on me in the AU season. Didn't rate him at all prior to the season. Now I kind of half rate him. He's been in my dream team a couple of times. Pataya has looked good in the few games that we've seen him. Feawai Sotia and Daugunu are your wings, so that's some proper tackle busting material right there. And then Jock Campbell's a pretty solid, secure hand at fullback who can also add a bit of punch on attack as well. Paisami is relegated to the bench for this one. At least he's back in the squad after not playing last time. Bryce Hegarty's there, Sorovi, Scott Young, so plenty of depth there. Both the Smith brothers are there as well. For the Brumbies, they've gone with Sio, Fainga, and Ala Alatoa in that front row, so it's an all Wallaby front row. Sio's going to have to be on pretty good form when Tupou comes after him at scrum time. Swain and Neville, second row, Valtini, Miller, and Samu. The back row, Samu's been in pretty good recent form as well. Ball in hand. A bit of a handful, you would have to say. Nick White gets a start. He's had a couple of runs from the bench, but he gets a start this time. Kunzel's there at 10. Simone and Kuridrani are 12 and 13. Kuridrani hasn't played for a couple of weeks. He is one guy who has kind of failed to fire. As much as some guys, like I mentioned, Hamish Stewart, have really kind of taken a step up in the AU season, I feel like Kuridrani just been kind of steady as she goes. Simone, I think, has been a lot better. Muirhead, Wright, and Banks are the back three. Pretty electric backs, you'd have to say. So if either side unleashes the backs, it could be a bit of an entertaining one. Solomon Akata is relegated to the bench for this one. Lonergan's on the bench. There's no Joe Powell. He doesn't even make the 23. Douglas, likewise, doesn't make the 23, so it's a bit of a shuffle round for them. So, yeah, should be a pretty tight one. The bookies have got this one pretty much at evens. The Reds are like half-point favourites, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm goes the other way and says the Brumbies are 2-point favourites. So there shouldn't be too much between these teams. You'd have to say, one thing you've got to love about Super Rugby AU is the fact that there is a final series. It may only be 2 games, second and third playoff, and then a final with the first playing the winner of that game. But it makes it a lot more interesting. Like, the Rebels have actually got something to play for here. And, the Reds know that, it's not a dead rubber. The Brumbies aren't guaranteed the title. They've still got to earn it. So that's maybe one area. For as good as Super Rugby Aotearoa was, that they could have done things a little bit better. But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts on this one. How do you think these games are going to go? Do you think the Reds can get that second win? I mean, I know they didn't get the first one, but can they get like the Brumbies to have a second loss of the season? And can the Force get a win? Or will they equal the Chiefs' record from Aotearoa and go the entire season winless? We'll see. You guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.